and I would like, would anyone like to motion to approve the agenda today? Okay, motion by Kate Baker. Can I get a second? Dale seconds.
So Baker, Vigliarlo, Shambelli, absent, and then Poppy was absent. Lennox, Lozano, Savoy, yes, and Ziegler.
Yes. And our alternate? All right. So with that, I think that I'm going to kick it over to our facilitator for today, or to Joe. Not sure who's going first over here. Okay, Joe's going to kick us off. Great. And we are going to use the microphone so that people who are watching online can hear us.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Joe Gaccio. I just wanted to officially welcome everybody. You're officially government bureaucrat adjacent. So congratulations on parliamentary procedure. This is the reverse mullet. That's a business up front. This really is meant to be more of a comfortable committee. We want to make sure that you're comfortable in your role. This is a lot of material we're going to go over. So thank you, Dean, for the technical introductions. But now we can take a breath collectively and just move on to introductions, getting to know each other as a team. I am Joe Gaccio. I'm the city manager. I've been the city manager since 2019, and I've been with the city since 2012. I was appointed city manager in 2019. And with that, I will allow Brittany to kick us off.
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening. Oh my goodness, it's been a full day already. So I'm Brittany Gallisdorfer. I work for a company called Bridgeport Consulting. We're based out of Ann Arbor, although I live in Detroit. And we help individuals, organizations, and whole communities be the very best they can be. And what that looks like is a lot of group facilitation, public engagement, strategic planning, and really helping groups chart their paths forward together. So what we're here to do tonight, in addition to learning about our responsibilities on this committee and getting a little bit of a primer on Municipal Finance 101, is really to get to know each other. We're going to be spending a number of months in hours and hours of meetings. We're going to be taking tours of buildings, and we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And it's really important that we get to know each other, that we understand what moves one another, that we build trust and respect with one another, and that we lean on each other during this difficult process. So we're also going to, if you know me, and you know Quinn and Dale and Kate, we're going to have some fun as well. So as Joe pointed out, we can enjoy our time together and still do serious work. So that's what we hope to do. So we're going to spend some time. There's something called the group development model, and this talks about kind of how groups form, how they achieve goals together, and it always starts with building what we call membership. And so we're going to start today learning about each of you, what brings you here, what your interests are, where you live here within the community, and then we'll move into the charge and talk a little bit about the details. It is informal in terms of if you have a question, by all means, raise your hand, speak up. We are going to use the mics. We have public comment because it is an open meeting slated at the end, because we want to make sure that you all have a chance to kind of form as a group and develop your own thinking about the content being shared. So that is what we hope to accomplish today. It's really just to kind of set the stage for all the work we're going to do ahead. Any questions about that? And before we get into detailed introductions, I wonder if we just do, because there are a number of key staff people here with us tonight, and they'll be serving as kind of subject matter experts along the way, and we can lean on them to provide information, and there's also a lot of history and knowledge generally about the community. So would that be okay if we have everybody in the room introduced as well? Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Greg Polika. I've been on City Council since 2014, and I was on the original Finance Board or Commission back in 2010 when the Headley Override was first introduced. I'm here again just as some historical information. If you want to know, kind of from a council point of view, what council is interested in, I'm here. I'm not in any way here to direct you or influence you in your decisions. But please at any time feel free to reach out to me, and I hope I can be of service to the commission. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emmanuel Johnson. I am the Recreation Manager for our Ferndale Parks and Recreation Department. I've been with the department for about 10 years now, so I've seen a lot of the department's ups and downs. So I'm also here to provide some context for the department situation and what's all going on with it.
I am Justin Gerlando, the HR manager with the city. I also handle recruiting for the city as well, so I know Joe's going to speak a lot about the difficulties that we're having with recruiting specific positions, but also I was on the facilities task force as well, a couple familiar faces from that as well. So I'm pretty much the person to go to when it comes to payroll, HR, and any staff issues.
Hi everyone, my name is Denicia and I'm the assistant to the city manager. I've been with the city since 2019. Also participated with the facilities task force and yeah.
How you guys doing? Phil Whitfield, I'm the finance director. I will be available to provide information as we go through this process, any historical information as far as what the rates have been over the past few years, what we're projecting to do going forward. I've been here since October 21, so coming up on my second year with the city.
Hi everybody, my name is Kara Sokol. I'm the communications director for the city. I've been here since 2015. I think one thing that we will agree on is that municipal finance and Headley are complex, and it's my job really to make sure that our community understands all of the options and what all those options mean. So I'm going to be listening really closely to all of the questions that are asked and decision making that goes on in this group, and using your guidance to kind of help and make sure that we can educate everybody else in Ferndale. And I just want to thank everybody for your time. I know that this is a big commitment. So.
Hi, I'm James Jameson. I'm the Director of Public Works and Facilities Manager as well. I was on the Facilities Task Force as a supporter, staff member as a Facilities Manager, and now I've recently been promoted to Director of Public Works, so I'll be here to represent DPW and Facilities.
By recently promoted, that is Monday. So congrats to James Jameson. And Roger Caruso, Community and Economic Development Director, in the back.
All right, so we're going to go around the table now. We'll start with you, Kyle. Share your name, your location where you live, how long you've lived there, what drew you to serve on the task force, and what you are most
So I think I got that list straight. So I'm Kyle Savoy. I live in Ferndale. Been here since 2018. I live on Inman Street, right by Urban Rest Brewery up there. I was drawn to this committee just having been victim of a few of the floods and just obviously having a lot of the public infrastructure come right to light. I'm a civil engineer as my background, so obviously have a big interest in infrastructure and funding, things like that. So wanted to lend my expertise to be able to help out. And then what was the last one? I apologize. Oh, I just love the community. Everyone always has a smile on their face walking around the parks with my dog, and love the downtown, vibrant, fun. So happy to be here and call it home, and looking forward to this.
Hi everyone, my name is Kimmy Lennox, and I live over on Highland Street in the northwest quadrant. I already forgot the order here, what drew us to be on the committee. So I felt compelled to apply to be on the committee because I was involved in the Fern and Learn program back in the spring, and prior to that, many moons ago, many jobs ago, I kind of helped the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority pass a millage to greatly expand their services in the city of Ann Arbor, and it just kind of, it sparked something in me that I really liked being a part of a community and like helping expand important services and just help make a community better. And so I thought I could do that here. I've lived in Ferndale now for about 7 years. And I'm sort of digging my heels in. It was one of those things where I thought I would be here maybe 3 to 5 years, and now I'm here, and I want to become more involved. My favorite part about living in Ferndale is probably the community. Everyone really looks out for each other, and everybody understands the importance of community. So yeah.
Hey there, my name is Simmer Cheetah. I am a newbie to Ferndale, so I bought my house back in November, and I'm on West Hazelhurst over by the old community center. I really just have fallen in love with Ferndale even beforehand. I work remotely and have a lot of identities, South Asian, queer, first-generation American, and part of me wanted to always move to the West Coast. I really loved Portland, but away from family and everything like that, and I feel like Ferndale is kind of like if Portland and St. Louis had a child, and my family's 30 minutes away, so it's perfect for me. And yeah, I don't know if I missed out on anything. I wanted to get more involved in the community, and I've got a degree in finance, so I figured this is a good way to actually like use my background.
My name is Quinn Ziegler. I moved to Ferndale in 2019. I serve on the I served on the Facilities Task Force. I currently serve on the Environmental Sustainability Commission as well. So this is just, another way to be involved and to, make sure we're including sustainability in our financial decisions, and from there. And then one of the things that I really love about Ferndale is its walkability. Walkability and access to public transportation are very important to me, and I would like to see more of that. So that's why we moved here, and that's why I love it.
Hello, my name is Dale Villarolo. I've been a Ferndale resident. I was younger then. I think around 1996 is when I first discovered Ferndale. I live in the French Quarter on La Prairie Street at Pierre. Have a wonderful wife, Karen, who's manning the fort right now. I served on the Facilities Task Force, and a long time ago, the Kulik Center Task Force. I'm excited to work with Brittany again and Quinn. Facilities Task Force. My wife would ask me when I would come home at night, how bad does your head hurt? It was a lot to digest, but it was so worth it. I believe in participating in your community if you want to have a say-so, and I'm fascinated with how cities operate and function, and I enjoy that part of Ferndale. One of the things that I really like about Ferndale is we're still a small town. We have a wonderful small town feel. I do a lot of a small roofing business in Ferndale here, and I do so much work around here, and it feels like everybody's my neighbor, which really they are. So the small town feel and sense that we have here is something that I'm very interested in making sure that it stays, and we have that here for a long time, because we are a small town.
So my name is Elvita Lozano, and I've lived in Ferndale for almost 21 years now. I live on Camborne Street, West Camborne, and I've raised a son in this city. I work for the city of Detroit, joined the city post-bankruptcy, and I've been involved a little bit with various organizations and opportunities here in Detroit over the years. I used to volunteer at the Historical Museum years back, and there were a number of years that I didn't have a car, actually, and I loved the fact that I could walk to the bus stop and go directly into the city where I worked for a number of years before COVID. so I love the walkability of it, and access to transportation has been wonderful. And I joined the committee because, well, I work for the city and I have an interest in economic development, and I learned a ton about municipal finance working in OCFO with grants right now, and excited to be involved when I saw this committee, and I'm excited that I was nominated.
Hi, I'm Kate Baker. I'm an addicted Ferndale volunteer. Hi. So I grew up here. I grew up in Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale, and I live like 10 houses from the Dairy Queen. We are in the same neighborhood. It is very dangerous to live on Beaufield Street, that close to the Dairy Queen. I've been in my home just over 20 years, which means I graduated from college over 20 years ago, Greg. Oh my God. I'm a former elected official in Ferndale, a longtime appointed official. I just retired from the Planning Commission after 16 years, partly so that I could do this, because this is, you know, clearly the place I'm staying, the place I'm invested, and, you know, managing the future of our city in a predictable way, so that we can keep the sort of the high quality community that we all value is something that's really important to me. So I appreciate the opportunity to sort of learn from all of our city staff, and thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of extra time for you guys too. And I look forward to getting to know the people on the commission that I don't know yet. And I don't think I forgot anything. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you all. And I just want to observe how diverse your backgrounds are. You all have different professional experiences. You've been here in Ferndale different amounts of time. You live in different parts. You have different priorities and things that drew you to serve. And I think that's going to be our strength, because your community is diverse. There's going to be lots of different opinions out in the community. And it's good if we can bring varying opinions here to this table and work through them together, because that's what we're going to have to do with the larger community. So as we do that, there are some norms that I think are going to help us do that in a productive way. They're listed on your agenda. The first is seek first to understand. So if somebody says something that you're not sure you understand, or you have an idea and you maybe are thinking in your head it means something, ask. Questions are welcome. There is not a question that is too rudimentary to be asked. I'll be learning alongside you. There'll be things I don't know either. We're all learning. So ask a question if you have it on your mind. Much better to ask than make an assumption. Welcome differences. I will help with this. That is part of my role. And I'd encourage you all to do that as well. So it's helpful if we can get the different opinions out on the table so we can sort them through, and then we will find a better solution together when we do that. So welcome different opinions, and then finally share airtime. If you're like me, you know, you're always the first to put your hand up in the air and offer your opinion. Maybe wait, pause, invite in somebody who's quieter, because it'll be important that we hear from everybody and not just the folks who are most inclined to speak. So again, I will help with all of those, but those will be the norms that we use to make sure that we get to the right place as a group. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. He's going to walk us through kind of how you all were chosen, what that process was, and what you have been asked to accomplish together.
Thank you, Brittany. Let me just, that's better. Kind of better. Yeah. Okay, Josh, I hope I didn't mess that up. Yes, thank you, Brittany. I did prepare just a general walkthrough for tonight. I want to begin kind of with the process. The process to put this committee together really began with Council's resolution on July 10th. But the idea really, I would say, stemmed from the conclusion of the Facilities Task Force report. In my letter to the committee, I cited that the task force was really tasked to evaluate our facilities, tour them, become experts, and help us prioritize what, when, and why, but not really how. How was the thing, that was a bigger question. So they left that out of their mission, and they focused just on the task at hand with facilities. So when Council adopted that as the city's long-term facilities plan, and I oversaw the budget process in the spring, we understood what we were supposed to prioritize, but we still didn't really understand how. We also understood that the city's existing 10-year millage is set to expire in 2025. So we have a confluence of two major critical decisions that are also kind of coming forth in this specific budget process. So council, during their deliberations, talked about assembling a finance committee, and that led to July. So as Brittany said, we got 27 applicants. The mayor interviewed all of you, and council confirmed those applicants. We were looking for the broad experience. We recognize there's well, the community prioritizes diversity, but when we're talking about diversity in terms of villages, we really want to make sure that we have a diverse set of homeownership experience, a life experience, and community experience. In your packet, there's a general overview. We do have general roles that you would assign to a typical committee. So Quinn is your chairperson. David Hoppy is the vice chair. He is not in attendance this evening, but we have defined each of those roles. There's 7 members, and then the alternate member, which is going to be valuable, which is really a member of the committee, has all the same responsibilities as a member. In your introductions, you know, one of the things I love about serving Ferndale is kind of brought out with committees like this. So I had the joy of reviewing all the applications, and I just wanted to put in a few of in your words. So these are examples that excerpts I pulled from the applications. And I think that the note that I have is a sense of positivity, a sense of service, and a sense of commitment, and that's kind of cool. And I would say that was exhibited in all 27 applications, which was a really cool thing to see. This is a finance millage committee. It's not a party committee. So I was thrilled to see the volume of applications, but then the positivity consistently represented throughout the applications and the thoughtfulness. So you had the intention to write them. I'll have the intention to read them briefly. I was proud to buy my first ever home in Ferndale in 2018. I've loved the community and everything the city offers, with one exception. I have endured 2 basement floods within the first 3 years of living here. I am aware of the city's aging infrastructure as a major issue, similar to what countless other communities face, and that is a great comment because it really cites the observable experience with infrastructure, the challenges of those, but it also does so in a positive way. There are hard choices in the years to come and will require careful understanding of the trade-offs involved. I desire to serve my community by weighing in on these trade-offs. I feel strongly about the implementation of the Ferndale's Climate Action Plan. I will work toward ensuring Ferndale's stated climate goals and represented in our fiscal priorities. So we have, what I love about that is you have a commitment to vision, but you also have an acknowledgement that it's going to require trade-offs, right? And that's, as the task force knows, that I always say, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. We're really going to have to work through some trade-offs here. Not all ideas work best, but what is important is to keep on trying. Ferndale isn't the biggest town, but I believe other communities look to us for guidance. We do lead by example, and we should all be proud of that. That resonates with Ferndale's mission statement, and that is really focused on excellence and anticipating needs and making sure we're a benchmark for a modern community. That's straight out of our vision statement. So I love that a resident just included that spirit on their application, and it connects right to our vision statement. Part of establishing roots for myself here means help ensuring the city can operate to the best of its ability, attract and retain excellent, honest, and hardworking employees, and provide those employees with the up-to-date facilities in which to work. And of course that resonates with me because I'm in charge of all city employees, so recruitment and retention is on my mind every day, especially following the pandemic. It's been a different world every day, as I'm sure you all experienced that in your own professional lives as well. Ferndale is the first place where I not only felt welcome, but also was fortunate enough to be able to afford purchasing a house in November of last year. And that gets at inclusiveness, but it also cites, I think, an affordable task of this committee, and that's considered the affordability. And that's an affordability problem in the region, of which Ferndale is a part. And we love that we are a part of such a welcoming and diverse community, and are grateful that we can teach our child these values while going to all wonderful Ferndale amenities, library, restaurants, fairs, etc. You know, as a parent, I have 2 kids, so that definitely resonates with me. But the message of inclusion, again, And I love the inclusion of the perspective of a parent, which I think is really important. The school district is so important. So briefly, just a recap of the mission, and this is important to keep us on task. This mission for this committee is to make consensus recommendations regarding a potential 2024 millage. The recommendation should include a millage term, amount, and purpose, if applicable, if we go that way. So in order to hit that mission, the things that I want to make sure that I help convey to understand: what are the property tax implications for any millage option that is discussed or considered? We want to understand what impacts are done for the staffing levels and government service levels, and then forward progress on the 2022 Facilities Task Force recommendations. All three of those factors are rooted in City Council's resolution. General overview of the committee: it is advisory. Ultimately, City Council, when enacting a millage, would have to vote on it. They would have to address the resolution, and then that would be submitted to the state, and so on and so forth. So this is really just an advisory role. We're giving them the best recommendation based on the deliberations over the next several months. Consensus, unanimous, is desired. Majority is required, and minority opinions will be documented. So that's important. And you'll note, actually, if you look at the Facilities Task Force report, we had a lot of majority recommendations, but there were differences of opinion, and those differences are always honored and recorded as part of the report. Brittany covered member responsibilities. In duration, I expect this to wrap up by February. This is going to be, as I said in my letter, we have to cover a lot in less time to do it. But we will do our best to conclude your volunteer service by February and give you back your time. And if I haven't said it yet, I appreciate your time. This is going to be quite a commitment by everyone. Ultimately, I do see this wrapping up in a final recommendation presentation, kind of what the Facilities Task Force did. The chair and the vice chair presented a summary of the recommendations, how they got there and why. And that will probably happen in February. City Council, in order to get something on the ballot, has to have a decision and some direction to give me by April of next year. So the timing is of the essence. So the questions that are rooted from the resolution, these are the questions we're going to ask ourselves. How might a millage renewal sustain current staffing and service levels? We will be talking at length about our current staffing and service levels and how those are organized. And the same, how would a non-renewal impact that? We got to understand that. We have to understand how millage renewals or non-renewals will impact progress on the recommendations in the Facilities Task Force report. And underlying all this in the backdrop is understanding how each of these questions will impact property tax scenarios. I got to catch myself up. Yeah. Sorry. Did I get ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to schedule. I think the easiest way would be to pick a day of the week and meet every other week on that day. We imagine there will be vacations, people needing time off for holidays, other events. Having that information, we can piece it together. If it's magical and today we can pick a day of the week and, figure out a cadence, that's great. But I think, too, communication is going to be really critical throughout the process. We were just talking earlier today. People are going to get sick. Like, it's bound to happen. Somebody's going to get the flu. Somebody's going to get COVID. Somebody's going to get RSVP. Somebody's going to get RSVP. It's deadly, I tell you. RSV. So I think we're just going to have to stay in good communication. I'll try to be here when we can be here, and when we can't, thank goodness we have a lovely alternate. So maybe we hold the logistics of that till the end, and if we have time, great, and if not, maybe we can do it offline.
Okay, that's great. Why don't we, before we move here, we're going to switch into the welcome packets. So I did share welcome packets with everybody. I spared you printing out So this is the the general orientation, I thought, of materials that might help you get as up to speed as possible on the problem or the question at hand that we just spoke about. You'll begin with finding my best attempt at summarizing the problem in one page in a letter to you, the committee members. From that point on, I really wanted to focus on the organization documents. So this is available digitally. Everybody should have a copy of that. You can kind of orient yourself back to this as we cover more materials. You'll also see me speak about this out loud because we are on camera and the public has to understand what you're looking at. So we've covered committee roles. Committee guidance, as I said, we are going to be organized similar to the Open Meetings Act, as you understand. The city clerk did give you an overview of the Roberts Rules. Did you need a copy, Brittany?
Yeah,
I have one.
I remember it.
The thing that is changed about this open meeting is we want to make sure that we're designing this effort to focus on the committee's work up front. So in an Open Meeting Act, we are required to offer public comment, and this is meant to be an inclusive committee, so we will be offering public comment just at the end of the meeting. At a city council meeting, you'll see that more up front before you get into the regular agenda. So that is by design. We are streaming. We record this just like a city council meeting, so the city has a YouTube page. I can share the link. I neglected to do that, but I'll make sure that if you're not a #1 fan of the YouTube page and you're not aware of the link, we'll send that out to you. So tonight's meeting is being recorded and it'll always be available for reference moving forward. You'll have the copy of the resolution, and that is meant to be an orienting document for you. The resolution is really the thing that empowers this committee and the committee's mission. So that's a good source document for all of us to go back to if at time we feel aimless or off track. I provided an overview of the Headley and Proposal A situation by a source that I think is very helpful in local government. How many of you are familiar with the Michigan Municipal League? So the Michigan Municipal League is based out of Lansing, and it's really the central association that all cities, villages, and township governments are affiliated with. They offer developmental resources for governments. They offer training for elected officials and commission members. And they also offer, they serve as a lobbyist function as well. So they try to lobby and support and advance issues that city governments face in Lansing to affect legislatures. Two of those issues that the Michigan Municipal League is trying to support is legislative change on two financial amendments that have been adopted in the past 30 years. And that is one, the Headley Amendment, and two, Proposal A. The Headley Amendment was adopted in 1978, and this is a pretty good overview of that. So if you haven't read that yet and you want to get up to speed, this is a pretty good quick summary and visualization of Headley Amendment. But generally, the Headley Amendment was adopted in 1978 as a way to make sure a community's tax rate increase was limited, less than inflation, essentially, the community's collective aggregate tax base value. And Proposal A was then adopted in 1994 by voters, and that really capped Headley was thinking about the community's value. Headley is focused more on the individual parcel value, your property taxes, your property value. And what that did is just limit the annual increases of your house's taxable value by the rate of inflation or less. So what you see and what this article shows is that really those two things didn't work well together, especially when you have an economic disruption like the 2007 and 2008 economic crisis. What we all saw there is a sharp reduction, and what we all experienced is a sharp reduction in our taxable value. So your property home's value went down after the economic recession in 2008. And what that did is lower the community's tax base, which lowered our millage rate. So in 2008, we were here, and in 2010, we were down here. Now, because of Headley and because of Proposal A, we're capped at recovering, right? So we're recovering at less than the rate of inflation. So while the housing market recovers we are capped in our recovery. So ultimately, it took us about 10 years to get back for the community's tax base to be the value it was in 2007. We actually didn't get that tax base back until 2018. During that time, when we lost such significant taxable value in the community, the council and the community in 2015 opted to vote for what is called a Headley override millage. So a community may enact by choice a vote that would restore the city's millage rate to the charter level, which is 20 mills. That's what we're authorized to levy for general fund services. Once you restore it, your millage continues to go back down and get rolled back because of the Headley Amendment. So every year after a restoration, you actually get a tax cut again. And so ultimately that forces a local community every 5 years, 10 years to have to go back out to the community and ask for a millage rate. And that's really the question at hand right now. So in 2015, voters approved a 10-year Headley override millage. That millage will expire in 2025, and so this committee is kind of getting ready for that. And they're going to try to understand what the impacts of that would be. Are there any questions on Headley or Proposal A? It's not a fun party topic.
Just want to make sure that there's clarification. In 2011, we voted for the first Headley override, which was for 5 years, and that all sunset. Yeah. Yeah. It was 2011. We voted for 5 years, and in 2015, we voted for a renewal for 10 years. So we've actually been on it for 13 years now. So thank you.
Good context.
I was just going to say, you're not sure, it's okay. We'll talk about this. It's, as Kara pointed out earlier, it's very complex, and we'll talk about it probably every meeting. And a lot of us will say, wait, time out. When did we do the override? And how many years? And what was the rate? Yeah, so it's okay if you're hearing it the first time. We'll all hear it lots more.
And I will be inviting a member of Oakland County's Equalization Department, which is, they act as our assessor. And so they're responsible for property tax appraisals, assessing, and they're also the experts in the county on Headley and Prop A. So they're going to actually come. You'll have an opportunity to meet your assessor, ask any questions you have about Headley, and they'll talk a little bit about that. Uh-oh. Yeah. So we need to secure them in October. So that's when we get back to this. I just need to lock up the dates to make sure that I can get them here. I also included what I included in this presentation. So in your packet, you'll see just a summary of the objective and the mission point. So again, really these are just source documents for you to come back to always if we get lost in the process, which is going to be a long and winding road. Next, I wanted to just provide some brief overviews after the mission documents, really the committee topics overview. And this is something similar to a process we went through with the Facilities Task Force, because when we're talking about government services and we're talking about facilities, what we're really talking about is the people. Like most governments, the majority of our budget is people. About 70% of the general fund budget pays for people. Governments don't make widgets, we provide services. So that's always going to be the case, and that's consistent with any government you're going to experience, plus or minus 2 or 3%. So in 2024, I will invite Justin to kind of speak on this, but this memo that Human Resources drafted really gives you an overview on their experience right now on recruitment and retention. Some things that are important to know: that civil service applications over the last several years since the pandemic have dramatically reduced. We've changed about every director or deputy role in the city government since 2021, including, I think, it was 35% of the workforce turned over last year. So we've been experiencing a lot of turnover, and it's been It's requiring a lot of Justin's time. He pretty much dedicates himself to recruitment and retention strategies and then actually exercising that. But with that, we have a lot of external factors now that are more dynamic than they were before the pandemic. And that's specifically competitive labor market because you have a lower civil service supply, specifically police and fire. I would call attention to that. And the trades and DPW are noted. You have fewer applications and fewer people just interested in those careers. And so where there's fewer people, you have greater demand and less supply. So you're seeing a sharp change in rates. And as a city manager, I call it a race to the bottom because it's not sustainable as quickly as these wage requests are coming and changing. It's quite dynamic. The evolving job market trends really speaks to that. Really, you have changes in work environment. Obviously, remote work has become more appealing, and the more appealing that's become, you have members of our workforce who might be thinking about different career options that could lend more flexibility. The city does have a hybrid work policy for some positions. Some positions can't have that. Someone working on your street can't work remotely. So we are at a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of just the general nature of our work as well. You see a table below that. About 80% of the workforce is union workforce. So that's about 120 of our employees are union employees. We have 6 labor unions, I think. And so what we've done here is kind of summarize the union, the number of employees in each of those unions, where the current contract terms are. You'll notice all the contracts, typically you would prefer 3 to 5 year contracts, and we're at a 3-year contract standard. They all expire about 2025, so right up to the expiration of the millage. So that's going to be a big question when we renegotiate those contracts. And then we have a current contract value. So that's the total value of the 3-year term. If you want, we can divide that for you, and I can give you kind of a general annual estimate. Yes, it is fully burdened cost. So you have your salaries and your fringe benefits as well. And you can see our human resource director also just noted retiree pension contributions. We do have, we have no active defined benefit programs. All of them have been closed. The city's general employee retirement system converted to defined contribution back in 1997. So that one is close to being over. I guess I don't know the right pension word for that, but inactive. Your police and fire have been closed. Those pension systems were converted into defined contribution over the last 10 to 15 years. So you still have a lot of police and fire employees who are still drawing contributions to that defined benefit program. And that'll happen until those employees age out or separate out. So you see the annual retiree pension contribution values are also noted there. That's important, and that's an important point I make during the budget because those are mandated payments. And right now our current annual pension obligations, which are paid for out of the general fund, are valued at about $3.2 million per year. That's what we pay out for retiree health obligations and retiree pension contributions. The value of the Headley millage is about $3.7 million. So that's a point that I make. If you lose your general fund pension or your general fund millage spending, you still have to make up those $3.2 million in obligation pension payments. So it kind of handcuffs us on our decision making in terms of service. And we'll touch on that in more detail, but that's why that's here. Justin, I just wanted to ask you if you could come up to the mic. Can you just talk a little bit about the picture of recruitment retention, where you're having the greatest success, where you're having the greatest challenge?
Like Joe was talking about, since COVID has been really tough recruiting. So just for an example, a CSR position, a typical CSR position, say in finance department, customer service position, I would have gotten 800, 900 applications probably in 2017, 18. And we opened this position, I want to say about a little over a year ago, and I got about 125, right? So kind of what we're looking at is not only like, hey, the unemployment rate's low, that's awesome, which it is, but it also makes that labor market even smaller, that pool of employees or pool of applicants smaller, and then pool of qualified applicants even smaller than that. And so at a time when we used to have 50, 60 qualified firefighters with paramedic licenses at each for each one of our recruitments. Now we're looking at maybe one, you know, and we go 3 weeks at a time through our application process, and it's drastic. And, you know, the trends that we're seeing is, you know, I'm a part of an HR roundtable that we kind of bounce ideas off each other. There's about 30 of us or 40 of us throughout the Southeast Michigan region. And lately, a lot of unions have been coming up with ideas how to fight inflation, asking for more money, this and this, and it's become a real struggle because everybody's looking for qualified candidates. And so we're competing with, and you can see here in your packet, with Royal Oaks and West Bloomfields and places that we'll never be able to compete with due to tax base size. You know, I had one union member tell me, like, Warren just gave their police officers, you know, 10% raises. I'm like, that's awesome, but that's also 147,000 residents. We're 20,000 residents, you know. There's a big discrepancy, you know, and some people don't understand that. So it's tough when we're competing against these big cities that never used to even have to recruit. And now they're all struggling to find candidates as well. So it's not just Ferndale or Royal Oak or Southfield, it's everybody in Michigan. And so we're all competing over that smaller group of qualified candidates. And it's really brought our numbers down as far as who we can get, and especially in police and fire, where police we'd have 50 interviews or 25 interviews, now we're doing 2, you know. And that has a lot to do with, yes, the labor market, but we had one firefighter that we offered the position to just last week. He had 8 job offers, you know, from different cities. And so he is allowed to, and absolutely allowed to, shop, you know, which one has the best contract. That is literally what it's all about right now. So, and it's a really difficult scenario, especially when we're dealing with, and Joe will get into it, and the people that were on the task force. We can't really compete with Royal Oak as far as facilities are concerned. What we rely on is our culture. You know, we rely on the people and the residents of Ferndale and their support for our employees, not only City Hall, Police and Fire, but our DPW workers. It's amazing the support that we receive. So we really do rely on that from that perspective, but they wouldn't know that until they're here. That's the problem right now, is getting them here and staying. And retention, you know, a lot of that comes into play as far as our facilities are concerned, and recruitment as well. So it's really difficult in this current situation we're in as far as the labor market to stand out when everybody's trying to do the same thing. What does Ferndale have that Royal Oak doesn't, you know? What does Ferndale have that Warren doesn't? We can't compete money-wise, but what can we compete with? And that's where we're really trying to settle in. And so while we haven't been able to get the amount of applicants that we've always wanted and kind of we're used to, the quality that we get, I mean, we hired Dean off these just in the last couple of years. We've hired Phil. We've hired, you know, we've turned over, like Joe said, a lot of our directors, and we've gotten some really good people out of it. So while the quantity isn't there, the quality that we found, and I think that's due to our processes, has been able to dig up those candidates that were perfect for us. So recruiting is successful, but incredibly difficult at a time when everybody's looking for the same thing. So.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact of our current city buildings and facilities on recruitment and retention?
Yeah, and thank you, Quinn, for that. During the facilities task force, we toured every city-owned building. And so the whole task force got to see kind of what we were up against. Yep. So when we toured the Fire Station 1 over on Livernois by Kulik Center, we had one of our sergeants at the time kind of speak to the employee issues that they're having as far as that facility was concerned. It's outdated. You know, we just until I think last year we had new windows put in, so there's sunlight getting into the building. It was pretty depressing when you'd walk in there. There were no windows. Yeah, there were like block windows, but they wouldn't. Yeah, they're block windows that let no light in. It was dreary. And we used to have our open houses, our recruiting open houses over at the fire station. And there came a point where it's like, I don't know if we should show them that yet. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to scare them away before you get them in the door. And we've actually had, excuse me, I remember one person leave because of the facilities. It's dangerous. There were some things there that just weren't, you know, and I think we came to the conclusion where we had to fix things, which we have been with Jim's help, and, you know, that whole with the whole facilities things that were put together, and we really got to see what the issues were at that current building, right? That was number one on our priority list from the facilities task force. The police station, you talk about inequities between men and women facilities. Same with fire. And we'll put them all in the same place. I mean, there's sewage leaks in their workout rooms down in the basement. There's constant flooding. In City Hall is by far the best facility we have, you know, and even this place you can see the pillars outside are kind of crumbling apart. It's not necessarily a huge issue right now, but this is like the state of our buildings. And so with City Hall, it's tough because we don't necessarily have the accessibility that we should have for people with disabilities and stuff like that. And then having, you know, equity when it comes into the departments, the police and fire departments, as far as changing rooms and workout facilities and bathrooms, that's just not there either. Those buildings weren't built with that purpose, and we're trying to retrofit those to fill those needs, and it's just not up to par. And then we go into, yeah,
I just want to make a point on that. I think, and the point we're trying to make here, and you'll see this when you walk through the facilities, the inequities is the thing that I would highlight. So if you're in the fire department, both the police and fire department were built at a time when we didn't have women in the service. They were built in the 50s and 60s. And so it wasn't designed to think of equitable facilities. And so actually we didn't have our first, I think we had our first female firefighter in 2016 or 17. So at the time we had to retrofit a bathroom, and we had to transition a bathroom area into a shower to accommodate the facility. So when you look at equity, I know the facilities task force was particularly struck by that. And it's the same thing the police department, when the facility was built, I don't think it was built with equity in mind, but 20% of our police department staff now are women, and they still don't have the same changing opportunities, locker opportunities. They don't have adequate facilities. So that, when we're talking about recruitment and retention, and we're talking about, you know, there's a lot of cities around here, especially out in the townships, that have much more modern facilities because they're newer communities, frankly, than Ferndale, which is an older community. So they have different advantages out there, and that ends up being a draw for a lot of our staff or a lot of our future staff that we would hope to try to get. So as JG said, and I think I said this in Ferndale, we can't compete on facilities. We try to compete as best as we can on contracts. I think we're typically middle of the pack, or we try to strive for north of the middle of the pack. But we're scrappy on culture. We have a really good culture, and the same reasons that you cited in the community is the same reasons we draw that workforce. People are interested in serving this community. The question is, are they compelled enough by the community to outweigh the facility shortfalls and then the alternative contract options? That's really where we're seeing before the COVID, maybe, but not so much now. So that's changed a little bit.
And Joe, I don't know if there's any natural pause point, but we're about halfway through. It might be helpful to take a bathroom break, grab more pizza, get more water.
Yeah.
Now a good time for that?
Why don't we take 5? That's fine.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a
Facilities.
5-minute break. Refuel. Stretch your legs.
city, the state's on an October fiscal budget. So a lot of cities, most cities are July 1. We're back, sorry. Thanks, IT. So I kind of just overview a circle of the budget process. Really for us, the budget never stops in process. We begin in July 1. Right now we're already preparing for the capital plan update that gets updated annually. And so I'll go through those in a minute. But for us, it's a constant process at the city manager's and finance office all year long. I wanted to just give you as much background as I could on the facilities task force, so I actually provided, after the budget process, an overview of the dilemma they faced. Please.
Thanks, Quinn. Commissioner Baker, just two quick questions. I think Councilmember Pollica answered for me. You guys do a 3-year budget process now? And remind me, balanced budgets, because you talk about budget adjustments and, sort of throughout the year checking in. Balanced budgets are mandated by the state of Michigan, right? So you are always working toward balancing a budget, right?
Yeah, correct. The city can't pass a deficit budget, so the general fund will always have to balance no matter what.
Thank you.
Making it hard in April. Good point. Thank you. The next sheet just gives you a quick snapshot overview. We're pulling you back into 2022, what the facilities task force was faced with. And so what we did is present them with data. And City Council had asked us to, one of Jim's first things that was required of him as a facilities manager is get us the data on the facilities so we can understand and make data-driven decisions. And so they got a facilities condition assessment in 2021. That condition assessment gave us a lot of expensive suggestions and an inventory of all of the issues that each building's faced. And so really, you have all of those facility investment realities cutting against the millage reality, the reality that that's going to be expiring. So once you have the data, you can't unsee the data. So now we have the data, and so we pulled the facilities task force together to help us examine the data, get to know the facilities, and then help us make prioritization decisions, which did result in recommendations to consolidate facilities, several facilities, and change some facilities like our parks and recreation situation. Some of the comments from applicants covered, what they love about Ferndale is our commitment to sustainability. So I wanted to make sure that the committee just has a good baseline of the sustainability-oriented actions that have been taken. This is a very, brief one-pager, but what I tried to do is provide you access to the information to explore the more in-depth information. So most recently, working backward from most recently, we adopted a climate action plan. And before that, we were really focused on data-driven decisions and culture change. So you had the greenhouse gas inventory in 21 and 20. We adopted downtown waste reduction plan, which really led to the creation of a zero waste coordinator position. And really, if you're a compost participant, it led to that composting decision. And before that, we're looking at stormwater vulnerability assessment to address the flooding needs that we continue to have with the realities of the climate today. Accessibility is also a really important principle with the city. In 2019, City Council reestablished the Ferndale Accessibility and Inclusion Committee. And so that committee has been established for the last 4 years, and they've really helped us take a different view of city facilities. And so the facilities condition assessment outlined some accessibility-related deficiencies in all city facilities. And so that is also a factor in determining how we address city facilities. We kind of summarized some of the deficiencies or needs in each facility below, specifically with the City Hall, the Public Works, Police, and Fire stations, both stations. So that is really the general overview I wanted to give in the orientation. And in your digital packet after that, I linked to 3 key finance plan documents that you'll probably refer back to, or we will refer back to throughout this process. Beginning with the 2022 Facilities Task Force Report, I'm just curious, how many people were aware of the report or even the initiative? So we needed to communicate better. Not everybody. I wanted 100% on that. So that we still got work to do there. But that report is included in there. It's robust work by your fellow residents. So it's really important information. The capital improvement plan, as I said, we're just about to begin that. But that is a 6-year plan now. It was 5, now it's 6, and we update it every year. And that's really just our best attempt at projecting capital needs for the city. In some of those projects, that is just a plan, that is not a budget. So we take that capital plan into the budget process, and based on the capital plan, we negotiate those as priorities for the budget. And whatever funding we have, we advance those. So the capital plan includes facility investments, fleet investments, major planning initiatives like funding the master land use plan or climate action plan and associated initiatives. And then finally, the most recently adopted budget. There's 2 pieces to know about that budget. The budget description shows summaries of a program-based budget, and that's what City Council technically adopts. We adopt a program-based budget. Program-based budget really is just a more current governmental philosophy, simply saying we provide services, programs, not line items. So when we're making budget decisions, often in the past we thought about what to cut. When we're looking at line items, we're just trying to balance a checkbook, and you think about what to cut without really understanding what that impacts. Changing or cutting a city clerk department by 10% isn't just a number. That translates into programs. So what programs does the city clerk provide that 10% is going to impact? Right, and that's so council adopted a program-based budget, and that changes the philosophy. Now we're talking about what do we keep? Because the program-based budget looks at all different kind of budget categories, and it's really more about aligning your budget investments, not just in need, but also in mission, vision, and values. So, you know, where we can, we're going to be funding accessibility improvements, sustainability improvements, and those improvements that dovetail into programs and initiatives. So we'll go through program-based budgeting. So what you see is program-based budgeting on the front end of that budget, and it's backed up by the line items, because line items is still, that's the audit tool. That's still the way to audit this. I'm going to jump back to the presentation. Josh in the IT room, if you can put the presentation back on the screen, please. Thank you. And this is really the last thing. It's going to be an overview of the budget process. I just wanted to provide something really high level. Is that okay? Okay.
We can't teach them everything about government finance on the first day.
You'll find that I get reined in every meeting. And that's okay. So rein me in if you think I'm going on. So fund accounting, how many people are familiar with fund accounting? All of our gov people, for sure. Really, I just want to start with the basics. So we are forced to organize our monies in different sources based on funds. We establish funds. So the parking fund, for example, we draw revenues from parking meters and revenues from parking enforcement. Those revenues can only be used to support the parking system. We can't charge people money and collect money for use of a parking space and then just pay Phil's department with that. We can't just do that. So fund accounting, because we're a government, we're supposed to be collecting money and spending money for those purposes, generally. General funds and restrictions. So the general fund is, that's your property tax millage. The property taxes you're paying on your tax bill really are supporting your general fund services. We talk about the services and the facilities. So your city hall staff and the facility, your police department. We have 2 fire stations. You have your public works department. You have their Southwest storage yard, which has some other funding streams. Public works is more complicated than most departments. And your parks and recreation. And many people don't realize the 43rd District Court is actually a function of the general fund. So a portion of your taxes pay for that facility, and they also draw revenues from other sources as well. but the general fund is responsible for any deficiencies if there are deficiencies in that department. I covered the parking fund. The water fund also, you have water bills. The revenues we collect on the water bills can only be applied for use for water-related, utility-related activity. So that's an example where we couldn't charge you on your water bill. We couldn't apply the revenues we collect for your water bill and use that to fund any other department or service. It has to be used and restricted for that. And we're audited on that. The water facilities we do have, Jim, we have 2 pump stations. We have the pump station and then the booster station on the west side, right by the fire station.
Joe, question. So you said things like money collected from the parking fund cannot, regarding parking operations, cannot be used for other purposes. Does it work the other way around, that money from the general fund could perhaps be used to pay for parking operations?
Yes, ultimately, only when it comes to debt obligation. So when you're looking at the DOT, for example, if the parking fund is unable to earn enough revenues to pay the debt service for that construction project, then the general fund is ultimately the backstop for those debtors. Without debt, you just have to continue to adjust rates to pay for the operation. That's an enterprise fund. Enterprise meaning business or commercial. It operates like a business. Your major and local streets, this is a good point of clarification. So we collect revenues that are passed through the state via something called Act 51. And Act 51 really is a source for us to invest in our local infrastructure and also in our major infrastructure. Projects like Woodward Moves actually are not funded by the general fund. It's funded by the major roads. So your tax bill did not fund Woodward Moves, but the revenues council had planned on that project, and we knew that. So we had been creating fund balance for that project should we ever actually get the state to agree to it. It took 4 years, but the state agreed to it. It took a long time. So by the end of that 4-year period, we had applied for enough grants to cover about 80% of the project's costs, but the other 20% were significant, but we had saved them in our Act 51 dollars over about a 4-year period. So Woodward Moves, but you'll also see a portion of tax dollars passed down to us on an annual basis that can be applied for facilities that support infrastructure, like paying for your street sweeping services, your street sweeping equipment that furnishes those services, things of that nature. So any infrastructure-oriented program can draw funds from Act 51 dollars, from state tax dollars. And those state tax dollars, that's the fuel tax. So if whatever tax you're paying at the pump, a portion of that gets distributed down to the county and to other local governments like the cities. The American Rescue Plan Act, that's been very topical. That is a one-time fund that we got. We did not get as much as some of our neighbors. Still bitter party of one about that. Candidly, Royal Oak got 28 million. Ferndale got 1.9. So there's that. I still don't know the federal ratio on that. I don't quite understand that. But the bottom line is we didn't have a lot of money to pass around there. And actually, we needed a lot of that money to catch us up on some legacy fire department fleet issues. Really, we've only funded 3 things off of that, and that is a new ambulance for our fire department. We've purchased a new fire engine for our fire department. Those 2 items themselves cost $1.3 million. So we're almost through our ARPA funding. But that money has to be spent by 2026, so it's also not always going to be there. What is left right now, council has left in reserve to support key strategic priorities like the facilities task force recommendations should we continue to make progress on those. The sanitation fund, same thing. On your property tax bill, you'll see a sanitation related tax or waste tax. You'll also see a sanitation fee. The taxes, there's a state law that restricts how many mills a community can put on your tax bill to apply towards sanitation services. State law also allows the community to create a sanitation fee to offset whatever the gap is. And so that's why you have a sanitation tax and a sanitation fee. Both of those combined together cover the operations costs, should cover the operations and the capital costs for sanitation. Those are the major funds. We have some other smaller funds, Community Development Block Grant Fund. The city does get CDBG. It's, in the scheme of things, de minimis. It's only $87,000 a year, and the uses are pre-programmed because it's federal. We don't have a lot of discretion for how we can spend that money. It's very limited, so that's why that's not cited. Are there any questions on the funds? Tim.
Through the chair. Can the city invest any of those funds into accounts that would accrue interest or anything? Like, can the city grow that money?
Phil's gone. I'll speak my best Phil without Phil. The city practices pooled cash accounting. So really, we collect all of our revenues, we put it into a bank. It's called a pooled cash account. We do make investments off of that. So the purpose for that is, you don't want to invest with your separated accounts. You put all your money together, as much money as we earn. We do earn some interest off of that. And then that interest is then applied back to the whatever fund that they're drawn from. That's reconciled on an annual basis by Phil. That's about as deep as I can probably, or should get into it.
Well, we can't buy Apple stock.
But no, we can't.
Right.
They are. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to ask the city manager to clarify that pension funds are invested. There are boards that manage those investments, and how well those funds do impacts how much the general fund has to contribute toward the pension funds every year too.
Yeah, we do have two pensions. We have a general employee pension. That is the one that was closed in about 25 years ago. Because it was closed so early, it's considered a super fund. It's actually 300% funded, meaning the fund is worth three more times than the maximum amount of liabilities it would have to pay out. The rub there is that the money there can only be used to benefit the pensioners that contributed. Well, there's about 5 pensioners left. So that fund, actually, even our pension attorney would tell us, we don't know what's going to happen after that because it's never happened before. So the headline for you is we can't do anything with that money to our knowledge today unless there's a change in law. And then our police and fire pensions. So our police and fire pension actually, because we've experienced such turnover, you're seeing more draws in the police and fire department over the past 7 years. So before the pandemic, we were about 90 to 95% funded. We are about 75% funded as of last year. So we do get appraised that every year. And so an actuary will then run the numbers, forecast our liabilities, forecast our projections. And so ultimately what that resulted in last year was a change in the assumptions that has increased, over the last 4 years, that has increased the general fund's contribution requirement for the police and fire pension by $400,000 a year. So that's sizable. Again, that's a mandated cost. So we also can't shortfall that. So we have to take the actuary's assumptions and we have to make those monthly contributions as they prescribe. And then hopefully the pension funds do better than they predict. But a lot of that, all of that is out of our control. But all of that is managed by a police and fire pension fund board that is defined by charter. And the charter requires the city manager and the mayor and one council member to be on it. And the mayor and Councilman Paul can serve on the pension board. Three finance docs to key in on. And this is me being cute. You'll see the house on the keys. That's because cost of living is going to be a factor in all of these 3 documents. If I have to explain it, it's probably not that clever. So, general fund. This is really just a general overview of the general fund. We've talked about the approved Headley. It's going to expire in 2025. The important thing that I try to emphasize to the public and council is the value of that. It represents about 30% of the property tax revenues that we collect on an annual basis, or $3.7 million. And that's in today's dollars. That's not forecasted out into future value. So that funds things like police, fire, public works, parks and rec, city hall, and something that, two departments that didn't exist until the Headley was passed in 2015. We never had an information technology budget. So we established an IT budget, thankful for that. And our communications department was established, and we also established a centralized facilities manager in public works. Before the Headley, we had decentralized facilities management. So each, your police chief would be responsible for making facility priority decisions and investment decisions in the police department facility, and so on and so forth for every department. That's pretty common for city governments. So forward-looking impacts, what that looks like, you see, really we want to show the bar chart shows the green is just the normal general fund, and then the yellow is what the voters approved, and that's carried forward into the forecast. And you can see in the table what that looks like. So you're looking, well, that's just the reality. You have to make decisions. So we're going to have to make decisions. Should the Headley override millage not be continued? So we're on a fiscal year again. So really, since we adopt a 3-year budget, when we're adopting the budget this July, we're adopting the fiscal year 25 budget. We're in the fiscal year 24 right now. It just started on July 1. So it might seem 2 years out, but it's really not. It's 1 year out, and it's going to hit this budget process. The 6-year capital plan, the state had a best practice shifting it to 5 to 6 years, and we are a redevelopment ready community, so we orient around that. That provides a lot of benefits to the city in terms of state influence and state dollars. So we adopt that on an annual basis. You'll notice in this chart just kind of how we halted progress with COVID, and it still kind of stayed stunted. So really, I've become pretty conservative with our capital dollars the closer we get to the Headley millage. With this new facility information, we are just generally pretty conservative with how we invest right now. That's not to say we don't have significant needs. Our fleet is in significant need, and so are our facilities. But we don't want to throw good money after bad on the facilities side. So we are just doing minimum investments for the facilities condition assessment report that we had, and with the consulting of the facilities task force report. Are there any questions on either of those first two?
I just want to make sure. In your capital improvement plan, because you mentioned the fleet, but major investments in things like fire engines are in that bar chart, or no? Because you look at that, and you see, oh, we made $1.8 million worth of capital investments, or 1.9 in 2019-20, but that might have been an $800,000 fire truck, or no? That
was actually not in there, no. The fire truck we bought was represented in the ARPA fund, so this is focused more on general fund capital expenses.
So right now we're really looking at buildings in this pie chart, or this bar chart.
This
Okay,
is looking, this is still looking at park grant projects. So when we had to match a park grant, the Geary Park renovation, we have we got a lot of grants for those, but we still have a match. So that match is a capital investment. You're going to see that in 18 and 19, and 19 and 20 is mostly, largely park investments that we made that were match grants. Some fleet as well. We've really worked on getting our public works fleet right. Our public works fleet was, before the Headley, about 2015. I've been here long enough. We were driving, most of our vehicles were from the early 90s, and they were just breaking out. We were really behind. So those are actually mostly current. That's the good news. Is our public works fleet is pretty current next. Our police fleet is pretty current now, but the fire fleet is kind of the next thing. That's also the most expensive one. Speaking of, there you go. Got ahead of ourselves. So, yeah, in fiscal 22, we did use the ARPA to purchase a fire engine. We are replacing a 1996 engine that was still is still in operation technically, because we haven't actually got this vehicle delivered. Fire engines and EMS vehicles are taking about 2 years to deliver after purchase right now. So council actually purchased this. The first one was, I think, first purchase, though, the EMS was in February 21, or February 22, and we're still waiting. We're still waiting for it. It's scheduled to be delivered next July. So, and then this ambulance was approved last October after the facilities recommendation. That's not going to be delivered till next summer as well. So, If you can imagine, put yourself in that 1996 fire engine, there is no air conditioning in those engines. That didn't become a standard in fire engine until much later. So really, again, your fleet differences do factor into recruitment, retention, and just general, it doesn't mesh with our values. We don't want to be putting people who are fighting fires in vehicles that don't have air conditioning. So you can see the shift with the, you can see when we're looking at the total capital expenses, really, we are emphasizing, we're beginning to emphasize fire there. A lot of that's $250,000 in windows in Firehouse 1 because we had a morale issue, and we know the facility is not the best, but what's the alternative? Wait 7 years for a decision or get these people some light? So we got these people some light.
Joe, you talked about the fire truck did not have air conditioning, which is obviously, you know, not convenient for anybody, especially if you're wearing a ton of equipment. But can you talk about how modern fire equipment affects our homeowners insurance in terms of response time and the equipment time? I know that might not be your area of expertise, but it's a key facet that homeowners and that some of us may not really appreciate.
I will do my best to summon my inner Chief Robinson. But certainly the city manager is a jack of all trades, expert in none. So yes, it's called an ISO program, and we're actually going through that right now. Each community has an ISO score, and that ISO program is really evaluating a community's water system, a community's fire prevention services and fire facilities. They really want to make sure that a homeowner who chooses to reside in a community has their homeowner insurance is informed by risk management. And in this case, the ability to make sure that we're providing adequate water pressure, water supply, clean water supply, and adequate furnishing our fire and EMS people and our police department with adequate response. And the other piece of that is the building side, making sure that our building codes are current and being followed, which all play into risk management. So the insurance industry has a program that is updated, I think, every 4 or 5 years called an ISO program. I can't remember what that acronym stands for, but if you Google it, you'll find it. So ours, we're actually going through it right now. We're updating our community ISO. We expect to get our updated score this December. We do think we'll move positively because we have since invested in our dispatch has become accredited as an EMD or emergency medical dispatch, which means they're more proficient and responsive in handling EMS distress calls and executing those distress calls, dispatching those distress calls. You have to get a state certification to become an EMD. And Ferndale was not at the last ISO. We are now. So we think that's going to play in our favor. And then this is just a summary of that task force report. This is ultimately, there's a lot of work behind this table, but this is where they netted out in terms of decision making. And I do not want to speak on behalf or misspeak on behalf of the task force, so please step in or correct me if I get anything wrong. But what this table summarizes, you know, they looked at the square footage that exists, the usable space and the future needs that were also identified in the condition assessment we talked about. And then from that, we had enough information to know, based on the square footage, the size of the facility, and the use of the facility, what it would cost for new construction, what it would cost to expand a facility, to rehab an existing facility, or to rehab and expand. And ultimately, after the research during the 6 months, they realized that new construction and rehab and expand were about the same. So where it made sense, they proposed new construction, and where it made sense, they proposed consolidation as well. That could be new construction. For example, the top priority was addressing public safety facilities. And the proposal was to consolidate our police department and our first Fire Station 1 headquarters into the Fire Station 2 and to redevelop Fire 2 as a public safety headquarters. So now you're going to have one facility to furnish a police department and a fire department. And you're going to get operational efficiencies out of that, probably some good cultural clashes by having our departments work closely together. And they both respond to dispatch. So now they're working with dispatch in the same building. So you have a lot of efficiencies from that consolidation. And then, in case anyone's watching, no one said get rid of Fire Station 1. Actually, it was to reinvest and rehabilitate Fire Station 1 and expand it, because Fire Station 1 currently is not designed for current code standards. Right now, just to, and I know Quinn can speak to this, but the issue, the primary takeaway issue for the task force, they were concerned that, fire department and EMS responders, they have a 24/7 job when they're in the facility. They sleep above, right now, a motor pool where those engines are pumping exhaust, and they're big engines pumping a lot of exhaust. We do have, and we've made some investments to capture some of that exhaust. You can still feel it as soon as you walk through the facility. When you're up with their beds, you can smell it. So that gets back to recruitment and retention challenges, for sure. Did I capture that well enough?
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. The current, you could not build a fire station today the way that our fire stations are. You are not allowed to have living space directly above the engine bay. You can have it in a side building next to, but the fact that the air quality up there is so terrible, the fact that if you are a firefighter coming in after dealing with a fire, you need to now take a shower because you are covered in carcinogens. Well, guess what? You get to walk past the kitchen before you can get to your shower. And now you are shedding all of those particles through your living space. And so there are some pretty significant issues within the fire stations that really resonated strongly with the facilities task force in saying this is not acceptable. This is a priority for us. We want to address this for you so that you have a quality and safe living and working environment.
Through the chair. After they return from a run, what is it called where they have to rinse off?
Decontaminate?
No, it's a specific space has a name. I can't remember it. But ours isn't even inside, as I recall. It's something that's outside. Was it? Anyway, once you learn and study this stuff, all the police, fire department, it's a mess. That's definitely a priority in our community.
This may be a loaded question for now, and if it is, that's fine. We can table it for another time. But I guess I want to understand how we got here, because what I'm hearing and what I was seeing in the facilities task force report is just like a very severe state of disrepair across all of the facilities. So like, how did we get here, and is that something that should be a mission of this committee too, to figure out a path forward so we don't ever get to this point ever again? And maybe that's in your report and I haven't read the whole thing, I apologize, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The good thing is that we now have a facilities manager, right, whose job it is to maintain all of these facilities. And like Joe was saying before, it used to be the fire chief's responsibility to maintain the fire stations. Our fire chief is a wonderful person. Our fire chief is not a facilities manager, right? She is exceptionally skilled in her area, but over the years, having people whose primary skill set was not maintaining buildings, and like Joe said, this is very common in municipalities where, it's your department, you maintain the building. We're in a position now where we have the right people in place. We have plans for ongoing maintenance so that we don't get back into this position later. And I do feel confident about that. And I think, Joe, maybe we should talk about doing like a little facilities task force recap of potentially at a future meeting, just so that we can dive into some of these details. I know we're a little bit tight on time now, but could be good for future discussion.
Yeah, honestly, it's your committee. So I had anticipated that there would probably be some interest in just some dedicated time and space to walk through the facilities report. I had anticipated an interest in walking through some of the facilities. We don't have the same time that the facilities to do every facility, but I thought maybe we could pick a couple of facilities and then a couple dates. If the committee was interested in the walkthrough, we can organize the resources to host it, for sure. You make a great point. You know, we have changed a lot since the 2015 millage was approved. You know, we reorganized city departments. I want to be clear. I'm not criticizing past administrations. Administrations made decisions with the resources that they had, and I'm not here to criticize that. I will say, you know, they were restricted, and so decisions were decentralized, and they make the best decisions they probably think that they can at the time. But it's not coordinated in a certain way. And oftentimes you see with governments that might have funding challenges, and Ferndale did before the millage went through. You have positions with 5 titles. So when I started, our finance director had 5 titles. And so that's people making decisions for a lot of service areas that might not be their subject matter expertise, but that is just kind of a default position when you're resource strapped. And we're resource strapped right now. To be clear, I'm making capital decisions I don't want to make. If I had the money, I would get our fire fleet on a regular rotation so we don't encounter this position. Unfortunately, we are at kind of a nexus point where, you know, we have made decisions with our public works fleet, with our police fleet, and, you know, here we are with our fire fleet, and I don't have the same resources that I had, and I also have an expiring millage. So we did replace 1 fire engine in 2017 and an ambulance in 2017, but we have more than 1 to serve this community. And so that's really the hard thing. You want to get those on a regular schedule so you're not finding yourself in a position where you have to update 2 engines and 2 ambulances in the same 2 fiscal years, because that's going to crunch your capital budget for a city our size. And this is kind of an example of just how we look at the facilities projects coming out of the capital plan before and after the task force. And that's just really a reflection of decisions. The biggest change, obviously, is the Kula Community Center. That was a very difficult topic for them. The task force did tour the community center. Staff and the community alike have a lot of passion for that community center. But the bottom line is the city did not own it. We were in a lease agreement, and the lease agreement terms required the city to make all of the capital investments for a facility we did not own. We were having budget issues. So it's about 105-year-old building. It was a former elementary school. So to reform it and rehabilitate it and reshape it to meet a more community center design facility, its principal purpose was to be an elementary school. There was a lot of money. It was a minimum $6 million investment just for the first 5 years to rehabilitate it. So, and that's from the facility condition assessment. We had the data, we presented the data, and we had tough choices to make. That was the first tough choice. And that choice relieved an immediate amount of expenditures that otherwise could have or should have been obligated to address the facility. Since then, the schools have taken back ownership, and they're working through a planning process on the facility.
Is it just on? Okay. So there's a lot of history with the Kulik Center and the former school. And so after the meeting or any other time, if you want to meet with me, I can talk to you about the history, but I don't want to take up a lot of time because it's rather a complex history. But I'd be happy to share that with you.
Actions we've taken since then, their task force report recommended building a recreational facility in Martin Road Park that's modeled after Detroit's Valade Park. I never know if I'm pronouncing that right, Valade. So it's really an indoor-outdoor recreation facility that we're working on right now. You'll see an article from me in the newsletter. I'm really happy that Parks and Rec and the team have secured about $1.3 million in outside funding towards that project right now, and we don't even have an architectural design. So we need to get one, and that funding is supposed to go towards that. So you'll see some public engagement likely from us to talk about the design for that facility in the coming months. But I say that because we really want to emphasize, we recognize the burden on the general fund. We recognize the burden on the taxpayer. We also recognize the expectation that the city furnish a recreation facility. And so we're doing what we can to maximize outside funding to minimize any impact that the city would have to fund that facility. Now the question for the millage, the point not to forget, we're not just funding the construction of a facility. You have to fund the staff to support that facility. So the conversation cannot end at just infrastructure. As I said, our general fund budget is 70% people. So where you invest in facilities, you have to invest in your people to staff those facilities. We have about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to actually go back to you, Brittany.
Thank you. So first, any questions about the content presented? I know it was a lot. It won't be the last time. I wanted advice from you, Joe, about if they were, I know you provided a lot of written material. If they were to read just one of the things you sent, what would you prioritize for them to read? What's most important to start with?
I think you got to start with the budget. Okay. I think you got to, don't look at the line items. That's going to just cross your eyes. Staff does a great job with summarizing them, summarizing the programs, so you can better understand the key decisions around the programs. But the budget summary is really going to give you a really good, decent overview of our revenue sources, how they looked the previous year, how we're projecting, and then the same thing with the expenditures.
Great, thank you. And if they, in doing their reading of the budget or anything else, have questions, who should they send those questions to? You, or do they send them to Quinn, or how do they transmit questions, whether those questions be answered at a meeting or however?
I think it's easiest just to send them to me if you have any comments.
Yep.
And then by practice, this is what I do with the mayor and council. Quinn, you're going to get your inbox lit up by me. So any communication, just know that I shared that with the chair and vice chair. I honor that relationship. They are the leads, and they need to know any questions or interests of the committee.
And I say that in part because of what you said earlier, which is this is your committee. So we need to know what you need to know in order to make a recommendation to the council. So if there's something you're not understanding, it's important we know that. If there's something you want more information on, if you want to go visit a certain site, that's part of your responsibility is to let us. And we recognize you may not know yet what you don't know. So we're going to do the best we can to make sure we give you good information to help you along the way. But it'll be a back and forth. So took a note about an overview of the facilities task force report. We'll put that on the next agenda. If there are other things you'd like to hear about at the next meeting, let us know that so that we can prepare content. What I was hoping we could do in closing, and we'll leave 5 minutes at the end for public comment, although
There's no one from the public
there is
here.
no one from the public, so we're good. So we can take all 10 minutes if we want. I just wanted to go around the table and hear from you what went well from you today, and what are you most looking forward to? And since we started on this side, we'll start with Kate. What went well? What are you looking for?
Thanks. You know, I actually made a note for myself. Councilmember Polika was talking about past Headley overrides and renewals. I realized I should have mentioned, so I'm going to go slightly off script. I should have mentioned in the why was this important to me section at the beginning that I was elected in 2007 to the city council, which was right when we lost all of this revenue to our city when the when the housing market crashed and the Great Recession started. So, and I was the acting mayor when we were debating the 2010 Hadley override. So it's very personal to me. It's something that is probably top of mind for me when it's not for other people. When I get my tax bill, I just think to myself, God, I should be paying more taxes. So I just wanted to make sure to share with my colleagues that, the kind of the formative years, I guess, for me of volunteering in this community were really shaped by the Great Recession and Hadley questions, millage questions, and millage votes. So Brittany's question was, what went well? Oh, I'm looking forward to emailing Joe with so many questions. It's going to be fantastic. I'm so excited. And I think what went well, I'm just really looking forward to getting to know everyone better. I think we have some fantastic expertise around this table. Ferndale is just so rich in people who want to volunteer and participate. So what went well for me tonight was meeting both new staff colleagues who I haven't met before and new committee colleagues.
Thank you. Well, I definitely really appreciate the way the packet was put together and information that was covered, and just generally how professional everyone is, and how the meetings are structured, and the transparency, especially meeting the city staff, is a real treat, and understanding what it is that you do, and how Joe emphasized that the focus really is on people, the people in the community, but also the work ahead to think about the people that are working here and that need to be retained, services that we enjoy in the community. So pleased to be here. I hope to speak with and meet you individually, and hopefully you can work closely together over this time.
One more time. Meeting our group of people that we all get to work together, and we get to know each other through the next many months. What went well? The whole thing went well. I thought it was a real good kickoff tonight. I'm excited to share task force ideas as we go on with this, and the importance of this whole committee. I'm excited to understand Headley better. I read the packet 3 times today, I think, and I'm, geez, oh Pete, this talk about making your head hurt. But no, it's just this is going to be really exciting stuff.
Great. I think tonight has been a really good setting the groundwork for the work that we're going to be doing here together. I'm glad that we are able to come together, that we are able to ask questions. I encourage you to ask questions, to participate. And I think that this is going to be really wonderful, and I look forward to getting to know all of you.
I think in terms of what went well, it's just, again, what everyone's mentioned so far, so just laying the groundwork down, as well as just emphasizing the importance of this committee, and I think your slide deck really touches on that quite a bit. And then in terms of what I'm looking forward to is just understanding more, just the inner workings of everything, and how that's going to impact the advisory going forward. So,
What went well? The structure. Oh my gosh, I work in an agency. Our meetings are just nothing but chaos all the time, and this was like, I'm like, what I wouldn't give to have like such structured agendas and everything. Like this was great, and I had, you know, some anxiety coming in here because I'm a newbie to committee life. I've never been on a committee before, and so I just really it made me feel a lot better coming in and knowing that like everything is just very organized, and I feel like we're gonna do some good things. So what I'm looking forward to getting to know everybody better too. Everyone seems so like kind and just eager to be here. So yeah. Oh, and I gotta be honest too, I read the Headley thing, and like I feel like the more I learn about it, the less I understand. So it's gonna, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna be asking a lot of questions multiple times probably. So.
Well, it was really nice to meet everyone on the committee. I really appreciate all the city staff being here. Looking forward to hearing your concerns, your needs, and having you present, I think, is very important and good. And then what I look forward to continuing to bug you guys and see what really the community's hardest decisions are, and it's really our responsibility to roll up our sleeves and help guide some of those tough decisions. So being able to work towards that look forward to it.
I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Can I get a motion to adjourn this evening? Motion by Kyle. Can I get a second? Second by Dale. All right. All, all right. All in favor that we go home? All right. Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight.